IVM.
सुनो अर्चित, आज थोड़ा सा तमीज में, ठीक है? हाथ में रहना, आज कोई मजाक वजाक नहीं चलेगा। मुझको आज शेफ बोलने का, ठीक है? शेफ से नीचे नहीं बोलना।
ओके शेफ। बट क्यों
है? हाँ एग्जैक्टली ये वाला था। देखो ऐसे द थिंग इज कि आज हमारे पास शेफ भी है, रेस्टोरेंटर भी आए हुए हैं, तो ऐसा शेफ बोलेगा तो ऐसे इज्जत बढ़ेगा, और इज्जत बढ़ेगा तो क्या पता कल को बोलेगा कि एक काम करो तुम अमेरिका आ जाओ, ठीक है? लेट्स वर्क टुगेदर, ऐसा ही बोल सकते हैं। तो सिर्फ इज्जत आज अपने को चाहिए, फुल इज्जत कल बेचती, आज फुल इज्जत,
कल फिर एक्स्ट्रा बेइज्जती मिलेगी आपको।
हाँ चलेगा,
तो
आज नहीं।
ये शेफ साहब और रेस्टोरेंटर साहब कौन है ये भी बता दीजिए।
ऑफ कोर्स वही तो मेन, इसीलिए तो आज इंट्रोडक्शन मेरे पास है, बिकॉज आई विल इंट्रोड्यूस देम, फिर नौकरी भी अपना, समझे? ऐसा सेटिंग ऐसे होनी चाहिए। खैर, we have got Roni Mazumdar, the CEO of Unapologetic Foods, which has restaurants such as Rahi, Biryani Bowl, Dhamaka, and Semma in the USA. Semma, by the way, is the only Michelin Star Indian restaurant in the USA. It won the award this year as well. We also have Chef Vijay, who is partner chef at Semma. Chef Vijay is native to Tamil Nadu. He brings basically his deeply personal and authentic moments and monumental dishes from his farm life, and which is ancestral land, basically from his ancestral land to the plate for people, right? And I said Semma is in US Greenwich Avenue, if I'm not wrong, for people who would like to go. तो प्लीज जाए, खा पी के आ जाए, और बिल हमें ना दें, बिल अपने पास रखें। दे हैव बीन सर्विंग हेरिटेज क्यूजीन बाय द वे, एंड साउथ इंडियन बाय द वे। So the reason of highlighting South Indians, we'll come to that. South Indian, North Indian के बारे में बाद में बात करेंगे. And we start with a big congratulations to both of you for winning Michelin Star. It's an awesome feeling, I believe, and everybody wants to win Michelin Star, I believe. Everybody. I mean, everybody who's in food.
How does it feel?
Well, thank you. Sairani, go ahead.
I think there's just a deeper sense of responsibility. And yes, you're right. I think everybody wants to win a Michelin star, but somehow I think our journey never started with that being the end goal. And it's funny how everything kind of gets intertwined. We just wanted to express what our cuisine was like, and we had no idea what the outcome would be, but we ended up being the only one in the country. So it kind of, yeah, it's an interesting feeling. Very humbling.
I'm glad you mentioned beginning of your journey, and that's where I want to come in. You had a job as a software engineer in the US. What made you leave that and start a restaurant chain?
Well, being a first generation immigrant, sometimes you limit your own thought process. And because,
right.
I was born in India, the idea that I was growing up with was that, there's certain things that are good and resemble success, and certain things don't. And you have to make decisions being a first generation immigrant in this country that is financially stable, right? Because my family wasn't in restaurants. No one I knew who was running restaurants. Going out to restaurants was a luxury for me when I was growing up. It didn't feel like I come from a fairly middle-class family. So owning one or few was never even a goal or aspiration. What it always felt like, okay, padhai likhai karo, grow up, do well, and you get a great job and you work for a great company. And what ends up happening is you do that, you follow that path, and studied engineering, worked in the Fortune 500s. Wasn't really a software engineer. It was more of a technology, innovation, all of those lines, slightly different than typical software engineering. But it was around that time my father was retiring. And, I thought, what would it have been like? What would have been his purpose if he comes from a much more humble background than me. He had his struggles like many of our parents. I think India, post, my father was born in the 40s. So kind of really think of right around independence, what was happening. It was very turbulent times. And I said, Dad, if you could have done anything, what would it have been like? He says, not all of us are born with the idea and the luxury of finding our purposes. And it really broke my heart in many ways. I said, why should someone respond to it that way? And he wasn't saying it like as if he was sad. He said in a very matter-of-fact way. And I think it's really important how in our generation we take many things for granted. Because in our generation, it's about empowerment, whatever we want to set our minds to. But that's not what my dad grew up as. So I thought, what would it have been like? He's always been so big in hospitality. I always loved to feed people. He cooks just as much as my mom. Maybe he would have loved it. I knew a story when my father went to a vendor in Mughlai paratha. in Calcutta. And it says, I was so keen to learn it. I said, can you make 40 of these for me? And the man, he paid him for 40 of these. So, but I asked myself, why would an average guy who was not in the field even be inclined to do that? Because something in him was speaking out that he never actually got a chance to explore. So with that, in 2011, I opened up a really small restaurant with and for my father called the Masala Wala. That's not on your list. And correction, Rahi is where Semma is right now. We used to have Rahi. It's in the same location. We have another restaurant called Adda. So we'll get into all that journey. But Masala Wala was born. But as we started the restaurant, I started to realize how many things were broken in the food industry, and especially how people saw Indian food around the world. Being in America, I realized that how people see a cuisine is actually a resemblance of how people see us as a community and people. And why is it that a cuisine that requires more ingredients, more labor, we cannot charge more than a certain amount when someone can put a tiny little bowl of risotto and charge double the money? Half the food cost, 1/4 the food cost. And I started realizing about the stigma and what it did, how it perpetuated from a storyline perspective, what our cuisine is like. And that's when I thought maybe there's an opportunity to break the mold. I had no idea if I was capable of it. I teamed up with Chef Chintan. Together, we built this company called Unapologetic Foods, and we started creating multiple restaurants that started to really explore the regionality of Indian cuisine, rather than focusing and trying to become a Eurocentric version of what our life is like. And that's what I think what we try to do. Our version of good Indian food is when it doesn't look Indian, when it looks European. But secret is, all of us sitting at home actually still crave the real food. We just don't put that out to the world. That's been a humongous divergence of how we have a moment that's so deeply personal. The roti, chawal, dal, the most amazing maa ka khana, all of these things are happening. But somewhere we never felt that that was worthy of putting out to the restaurants, be it colonial past, whatever it was. And that's what we started to change. We said that's the whole idea and the premise of unapologetic foods, that we're done apologizing. I don't care if you have a problem with a fish being on a bone, if you have a problem with a food having a spice level, or there's a little extra oil on top. Man, it was created because we were coming from a tropical country, and therefore many decisions had to be made for our cuisine to evolve the way it is. Why am I the one changing it? Which European cuisine has changed itself to be fit for India? No one. Why are we so goddamn desperate to do that? And all of that gave birth to over and over talking about regionality. And the first one that we really focused on as a region became Semma. Semma was the first restaurant as a group that we opened that specifically focused on a region of southern India, but not in the way that we even as Indians see it. The problem is, whenever we think of Indian food, southern Indian, what do we say? Arey yaar, idli, dosa, I know southern Indian food. We don't. Ask yourself, when was the last time in India you've had snails in a southern Indian restaurant? When was the last time you've had goat intestines? Why not? And there's many, I'll get into more of those details later, but all of that led to the idea and what heritage southern Indian food is today. And that's what we wish to have served in New York. And that's what brings us here.
Absolutely love the idea of being unapologetic for our food and the way we cook. And I think it also connects with the broader theme of being unapologetic for our own identity in foreign land. And I absolutely love that. I want to touch on the unit economics of Indian food versus Italian food that you mentioned, that even though the cost of ingredients in a risotto is much less, they charge higher. But Indian food, often you cannot do that in foreign land in the US and Europe. How do you overcome that? And how do you change that?
How did we change it, or how has it been in the past? So I'll give you two different examples. One,
how do you change it?
Sure. I think, but first, your viewers must understand how it has been, and then we will talk about how we have changed it. What's important is we have always felt, and you will see this across the world, whenever we have used foreign ingredients, ask yourself, go to your parents today and ask them what the word foreign versus desi means to them. Foreign means better. Desi means shitty. Truth. And we don't realize that. No one talks about it. But we secretly believe that. Think of the attitude. Think of how we present it. Think of the tone of how we say it. Dude, ye foreign maal hai, kya cheez hai, man? Why do we say that? How did we grow up believing that? Because of so many different reasons. So what we have done is we have taken foreign ingredients. We will cook a dal and put a burrata on top of it. But no one's putting a paneer on top of their cuisine. Because somewhere, burrata has played an amazing role of how it has separated itself, the quality, and therefore we believe by integrating those foreign local ingredients, we can also charge you more. We will plate it. We will make it look more European with few dots of oil and doing all kinds of stuff. And it becomes a higher and more expensive experience. What we have done, we have shed all of that. We said, let's go back to our core ingredients. The quality that we want to serve is based on the authenticity of where we come from. I'll give you a few examples. If we're sourcing a fish, if we're sourcing a meat, it's probably the highest quality that you're going to find in the market. There is no samosa in Semma. There's no naan in Semma. We're not diluting the cuisine. We're not trying to play this game of playing for both teams. On one side, let me give you a little butter chicken, but I'll call it South Indian because I'm so worried that somebody is going to show up and they're going to hate me for it. It's these insecurities that has led us to believe that everybody else in the world is superior than us. And it's not true. And until we reclaim that, I don't think it changes. I'll give you another example. We focus on the techniques more than just the ingredients, the quality, the integrity of how it's cooked, sourcing things like poni rice, sourcing things like siraga samba rice, every single one of these to cook the ingredients and bringing it as close to home as possible. But we're doing them with the highest quality. And you know what's funny? It's not just desis who are understanding it. New Yorkers and the world over are understanding the beauty because we're actually unleashing what our real cuisine is about.
Genuinely saying, Roni, that we have been doing this podcast now for 2 years. We haven't received, I believe, somebody who is as passionate as you are about food, Indian food, the way it is. And rightly said, your company unapologetic for being who you are and your food. Wow, I'm happy.
Massive respect for what you told us.
You get the respect, the love, but sometimes it doesn't make business sense. And I think in hindsight now it does. So a lot of people, I'll tell you this, it's not that people are not passionate. I don't think I'm the only restaurateur in the world who's passionate about Indian food. A lot of people are. But truth is, somewhere, because we never believed it made business sense, we chose not to be passionate because we somewhere felt, it's okay, how can we survive? If the business fails, my passion is going to go to hell. So somewhere, I think the connection of having that passion and being able to, coordinate that with a proper business sense as a team, I think that's probably what's making it thrive and how people have been responding.
Yep. This is why, Archit, I was telling you yesterday as well. Yesterday, matlab in our last podcast. यार देखो अब्बा सही बोला करते थे इंजीनियरिंग कर लेते ना तो बहुत कुछ जिंदगी में हो जाता नहीं लेकिन हमें तो रेबेल बनना था बन लो रेबेल See, this is why people should be engineer. Look at Roni, engineer and now restaurateur. हमने क्या किया कुछ नहीं खैर I come to Chef Vijay. Chef, my sort of I would say research, right, of the language, Tamil language, Semma means excellence or superiority. So what I'm correct me if I'm wrong, if that's wrong or right. What I also want to understand, you come from, you say that you are from Tamil Nadu. And how does the flavor of Tamil Nadu in India translates onto the plate in US? What's that sort of magic that is created on the plate in US at Semma?
I don't think we're doing anything extraordinary different or something. We just trying to be who we are, just like what we used to eat back home. Like Roni said, we're just trying to be like, we're not trying to please anyone else. Like we're not trying to fit into somebody else's mold, right? We just want to like cook what we used to cook back home. I think that this is it. I don't think we're doing anything completely different. Completely different. Something like people like me, like who came from a humble family, like a middle class family, we just eat intestines. Like let's say my mom goes to buy some meat or something, and she always gets some intestines free. Like they always like, and like something. If I go to like grandmothers like paddy field, we used to go for snail foraging, and then we cook some meat. We used to eat snails back in like rice paddies. So things like that. It's not like something that we are cooking something completely different or something transferring from like India to US just to please the US audience or something. Which is just like I said, like it's just we try to be who we are. That's it.
The same way I said desi and foreign. Think of city versus village. Think of your own mindset. Yeah. Think of farmers. versus somebody who's working in a corporate world. These are all incredible diverging concepts that it has become when it should not be. And I think that's really, really important to acknowledge. So what Vijay just talked about, how come we don't serve food from our village? And when we do, first of all, most of India is rural. Yet we want to acknowledge the larger cities, the Tajes, the Oberois, what is actually created for a more global audience than what we're actually eating at home. And we're doing that because somewhere we feel there's a socioeconomic pressure that's on us. We feel this innate desire to tell everybody, hey, we as India, we're a superpower. We have emerged. I don't want to talk about who's poor. I don't want to talk about poor people food like snails and goat intestines. I want to talk about the next foie gras that I'm having. That's sort of a huge, huge role that it plays in our cuisine. So it's not about food. It's not about ingenuity. It's about choices that we have made to bring our food to this point.
Interesting. And how much growing up and eating these food, and you have already covered, but I wanted to sort of get into a little extra detail as well and depth. How much has the food that chef you've been having or eating back home in India has influenced the menu? And when I'm saying that, I am talking about, because there are a few ingredients which make no sense to put up on a restaurant menu, right? So as a chef, I'm thinking about, let's say, for example, a patta gobi, a cabbage, usually makes no sense to put up on a restaurant table, right? But how has this sort of food that you have been having growing up influenced the way that you put up on the plate?
Sadaf, before Chef Vijay answers, I want to understand why doesn't it make sense to have cabbage on a menu?
For two reasons. One, because I don't like patta gobi, so I never put it. Primary reason. And the second also, I think, because patta gobi is a bland, as in it doesn't have the different flavors. Or, for that matter, the color. So the purple cabbage is often used in restaurants to get that color, the beautiful purplish color. That's how I've used to make soup, etc. But the cabbage, I have hardly seen, apart from cabbage goes nicely in your noodles as lettuce or like crunch element. But when you cook cabbage, it just loses its essence. But in South India, the whole of the belt, there's a beautiful usage of cabbage, patta gobi. And that's why I specifically picked up patta gobi here.
Well, I don't really like discriminate any ingredients. Like, just like, I just don't. Every ingredient's an ingredient. It's just a matter of how you cook it, how you present it. Like I'm working on a menu with some simple yogurt rice, simple curd rice. Like, something that we all use, like we all eat very small villages, right? But I'm trying to as long as you keep flavor, as long as you cook them right, you know what I'm saying? Like even the simple ingredients can be like completely like you can do the magic. It's just a matter of how you cook it, how you present it. I don't really necessarily think that, this is like a cabbage, like, we have to put them on the menu. Why not? Like, we don't have to discriminate any ingredients. Just cook the way it's supposed to and just make it more flavorful. That's all matters.
I'll say this, that I think goes back to the very idea that we believe restaurant food and home food have to be different. That's so Sadaf, ask yourself why you thought that way. There's a reason, because in your mind, you believe certain ingredients are too plain, too simple to belong in a restaurant, right? It's how we have all grown up. It's what we believe. The question is, why is that? The idea, what are we really trying to create here? What we're trying to do is bring you as close to home as possible. Maybe because we're in New York, it's a much more of an open canvas. People don't even have context of what real Indian food is. So when we start talking like that, in India, we all grow up eating our own food, even though we don't fully understand many different regions. Ask yourselves, how much do we really know about Meghalayan food, Bihari food, all of these components? Most of the population, we do not. I don't. And there's so much to learn every single time, right? But I think when we talk about ingredients, it's important to realize it's never about what goes in a restaurant. We have always broken that mold that there's no such thing as this is a restaurant and this is a home and it doesn't belong here. What belongs there is the story, is the narrative, and is the memory. I think what is setting Semma apart in many ways and our group apart is that we have always honored those moments more than what we have believed what belongs or doesn't belong. We belong. I am probably, as a human being, nothing but a patta gobi myself. Then what do? Then I don't belong in the community. Do you see where we're going with that? All of that you must understand and learn to personify and really move it forward.
That's a sad part. Like, even a lot of young generations, like for example, if you want to create a dish, okay, like Rani said, like something you make dish with the Viagra, like, something you make with like a truffle, caviar, that's going to make you like, look so like fancy. It's not. You don't have to like make the fancy food with the fancy ingredients. You can still make the good food, real food with the simple ingredients. I think that's pretty much our philosophy is too. Like, we don't have to go for such extraordinary fancy ingredients to impress any Western entrepreneur or to make a restaurant menu. We don't have to. We just cook the simple food, just like garka gana, like something that we eat back home. I mean, that's also an example. You can still get a Michelin star if you cook the simple food. That's also like message to younger audience. You don't have to go too fancy with your Indian food. You don't have to mix all the truffle, caviar, or you name it, or all kind of fancy ingredients that goes into the Indian food. You don't have to do that. Just be yourself.
It's not just you guys. We believe the same thing. We didn't think we would earn a Michelin star. It's not like, we woke up and we had it all figured out. We're still learning. Mm-hmm. So I think in many ways, we believe that, wow, what we're cooking, exactly. Since there's none of those elements that are there, that is the typical quintessential idea of how we look at Michelin stars. Michelin star, wow, fancy, all of these ideas are there. I think somewhere we just made a choice that it wasn't about how many awards we win, but how many hearts we win. And that's today with the awards and accolades, we're excited about it. But that was never the goal, like I said.
To sum up, in the world full of lettuce, be the patta gobi. Fit in and find your place.
Yeah. I mean, like Rani, like put in a way nice way. Like, I mean, winning our clothes, yes, it brings you happiness or whatever it is. But winning hearts, that's something like it's as a chef, that's a real happiness. Like, you win so many hearts. Like when someone comes to restaurant, they leave happy. Like I met like first generation of Indians, like 6 of them last night. They gave me a blessing, every single one. They felt like, they've been in the US for such a long time. They never felt like they were eating real food in the restaurant. And they felt like the food was so real. They felt like they were eating back home in Chennai or some of their friends' house in Chennai. They are pretty much probably in the 60s or 70s. Every single one, like they waited for me to say hi to me. I mean, and then they gave me the blessing. You know what I'm saying? This is something like winning hearts. That's the most important part of being a chef. And, that's gonna fulfill your job. Like that's a job satisfaction. Anybody can cook. Anybody can do anything. Like just like winning hearts is like that's something that I feel like we're doing something special by winning people's heart.
I think that's the most important part.
Very interesting. Yeah, I saw your menu and I saw there's a curry leaf flavored cocktail rather, and the wine pairings with food. And I was wondering, this is not how traditionally we consume this food in South India, but I see some innovation here. So I want to understand the process that went behind creating these wine pairings and cocktail pairings with the food.
European food or non-Indian food, non-Asian food in many ways, is designed in a way where there are specific gaps in the cuisine to be filled with wine. That's how the cuisine is constructed. So you're almost expecting that cheese and a cracker and a specific kind of wine to go with it. No one said it, but that cheese and the evolution of that cuisine has always had, I'm going to have a Barolo, I'm going to have this. So there's all these different components. Our cuisine is a standalone cuisine. So what we realized is that I don't even know if the word pairing really applies. I think it's more of an extension of flavors that we looked at. What we have been all trying to do. So all of these guys, we really did not follow the status quo as a company, or still not. Every restaurant, be it a Dhamaka, Semma, every single one of them, each time we have questioned the notion of how we think and why. We went back to the very roots of it. So when we started thinking of cocktails and wine, we realized because there are no holes in that cuisine, what were some of the things we could do to then extend the flavor profile, have it linger in a very different way? So our wine pairings are a little bit different. So a lot of the cases, what's the usual? Okay, red wine with red meat, we have fish and seafood with white wine. Easy. You can just do that, get some of the high quality wines and move on. We actually look at, who the suppliers are, where it's growing, which vineyard and all of that, which everybody looks at. But beyond that, we look at this factor of extension. As I'm tasting this dish, as I'm trying that cocktail, if I have a garnish of, let's say, a lamb on, with curry leaves, and then I take a sip of the curry leaf cocktail, it's extending the flavor profile. It's creating a much more, a whole new experience that you might not have had if I was actually thinking the other way and said, well, it's lamb, so therefore create this other flavor profile, which this is the Eurocentric idea that I'm talking about. Where we are failing ourselves is that in many ways, we keep going back to the idea that someone else has it figured out far better than us. And if we just emulate that, it's going to make us better. That's not what we did and what we continue to do. Our idea is, how do we break that mold? Maybe we're wrong. Maybe we're not right. I don't know. Turns out that we're somewhere right. But it's not about being right or wrong. It's about really presenting to the market and to consumers an entirely new pattern of thinking that seems fairly reasonable, but it changes in the way how you interact with it.
I'm curious because, and this is to Chef Vijay, the question is, based on what Roni just mentioned, right, about pairing the curry leaf, which is considered a very southern Indian ingredient. Now, in my understanding of Indian cuisine in the West, I always see the North India is a lot more prevalent, right? But restaurants like Semma, and then there are a couple of others who are changing this entire narrative of bringing the other Indian food as well, and saying that, hey, India doesn't mean North Indian cuisine only. There is South Indian cuisine, which, Roni, what you mentioned, beyond idli, dosa, and sambar, right? So, Chef, do you see this entire space now somewhere changing or taking its due course, and why in the space of lettuce trying to be patta gobi and sort of marking a big change in India, in US space?
Absolutely. I mean, sadly, there's been many years. In US countries not only US. If you go to other countries also, for them, the Indian food is just only about butter chicken or chicken tikka masala or naan. That's how they know about. Or maybe a few other Punjabi dishes, right? There are so many regions in India, not just South India. Even let's think of Bengali cuisine, or maybe you could if you go to Assam, Assam has different cuisine. Every region, right? You name it. Every region has so many different cuisines, which we don't even know that. And so sadly, I don't know why it's only particular region has been represented in US and the country. I think I see that there are a lot of restaurants. It's maybe we kind of started it. I hope there's going to be a lot more restaurants to come. Really hoping and praying there'll be more restaurants that focuses and showcase the real Indian flavors besides just butter chicken masala or butter naan or whatever it is. And I'm really hoping that's going to be happening very soon.
I think that's,
we think this is just the beginning. I think this is absolutely just the beginning. I think as a company, I think we still have a long way to go. And I hope there's going to be a lot more restaurants in the country pretty soon, near future.
Yeah. I think that's important for people to know. I'm going to ask Roni this question because when we are in India, we are going out to eat, quote unquote, European cuisine, right? We're not eating Sicilian cuisine. We're not eating French cuisine per se, but it's called European cuisine, right? But in Europe, it's not the case. When you go to Europe, I'm sure that you'll have Sicilian restaurant, you'll have French restaurants, and so on and so forth. Now, this regionalism basically, does it also in a way help you think the kinds of restaurants you want to bring in? And of course, call it Indian restaurant. But the same concept, does it help you? And also, I'm adding that to what you mentioned at the beginning, that you grew up in Calcutta, or you born in Calcutta. Have you thought about, or is there any Calcutta-based restaurant? I love Bengali cuisine, so that's why my personal interest.
I just opened a restaurant a month ago. It's so new, 2 months ago, called Masala Wala and Sons. And it's specifically focused and sons. It's a very 80s kind of a tone. Yeah.
You guys missed out when you gave introduction. I thought I was going to bring it up.
So funny enough,
explain.
We didn't do our job properly. Archit.
You didn't do a research properly.
Archit काम में नौकरी मांग रहा था यहाँ पे यार तुमने गलत पढ़वा दिया. कई नौकरी तेल लेने मेरी. आए बड़े. We'll make it up. Roni, Chef Vijay, हम में से अलग.
I don't want you to go. I don't want you to go to the US. I want you to continue with me here. So that's why.
जलता है मजनू.
So yeah, we just opened a restaurant called Masala Wala and Sons. And I woke up this morning to seeing that one of the publications named it one of the best restaurants of the year, and it happened in 2 months. And
wow,
we've had Dhamaka, Adda, Semma, Dhamaka, now Masala Wala and Sons, back-to-back now 4 restaurants that has followed in this category. So it's just really incredibly humbling. And it's focusing on home cooking from Bengal. You're going to find hilsa. You're going to find, bhetki, paturi. Like this is like every kosha mangsho with luchi. I don't think you can get more Bengali than this. And the whole genesis of, when you think about regionality, it's important that we acknowledge that India is a cluster of many different cultures combined, cuisines, languages. But we are one unified nation. But somewhere it's foolish to look at it as one cuisine when it's not. You cannot capture all of India in one restaurant, in one menu setting. But somewhere I think we need to make sure that we really explore that. So be it Bengal, be it Southern India, every single one of these components, it needs to be highlighted, and they're equal to one another. Whenever we looked at India, we always said it's Mughlai food or Punjabi food that makes it amazing. It's not. It does. And truth is, most of the world is not even serving real Punjabi food. When we talk about the food in the restaurants, it's not even real Northern Indian. It's heavy cream laden, a generic version, an American Indian version of what we're eating. It's not the real stuff. How many homes are using heavy cream? Ask yourself in Punjab right now. They're not. Why is it that every single restaurant that we go to is just infested with just everything? The kormas, forget the kaju, put some heavy cream. It has become a shortcut for many of us. So I think what we are doing is really, not only are we talking about regionality, we're also getting into the nuances of what makes it regional. A hilsa that's been steamed, and we made it a choice to serve it on the bone. And it's amazing to see non-desis who are not familiar with hilsa try to dig in and try to get, actually pick through the bones. I just think that's what makes it real. I was debating, I'm like, should we take the bones out? I know in India, restaurants are doing that. I said, no, how is that unapologetic? That's not how I eat at home. If I can do it, why is it that for me it's okay, but when you come in, no, sir, let me take that out for you. No, it's not. Part of the experience is picking through the bones. Why are we so darn afraid of it?
I see your courage and your ability to take these risks makes you so successful, Roni. And speaking of that, what are the future plans for unapologetic foods? Do you plan to expand to other parts of the US, Europe, other parts of the world?
Right now, we're really focused on New York. We're building a foundation and kind of building a base for Indian food, right? So Dhamaka was talking, has been talking about the forgotten side of India, which is really focusing on, like I said, Meghalaya, Bihar, Orissa. Where are those regions and how are they represented? So we did that, but from a rural perspective. Vijay brought in heritage Southern Indian. Masala Wala is doing Eastern, so really getting near that whole Calcutta, Bengal, all of those regions that you're exploring. We have a concept called Rowdy Rooster that's focused on Indian style, like pakoda style fried chicken. And it's something that I think we have a location. We're discussing opening a few more. And I think that's coming up. We're opening Kebab Wala. We have 3 more restaurants that are coming up in the next probably 6 months. One of them is Kebab Wala. So my friend from Delhi, it will resonate with you. It's going to actually focus on like the real deal kebabs. Whenever we think of Indian food, we're thinking of curries. I think it's time we really talk about the kebabs outside of India and explore that. So many things are happening. And I think the way we want to grow is in a very organic way. And looking at neighboring states like Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, all of those regions, and starting to plan the expansion that way. We're not on some crazy, let's go out and build 200 restaurants. It's never about that, man. It's just, our focus is, let's build a strong foundation so that we have legs to stand on.
It's interesting you mentioned kebab, Roni, for 2 reasons. One, I make amazing kebabs, just saying.
The consulting job just happened. Okay, let's go.
I know. Babu bhaiya, naukri mil gayi, Babu bhaiya. Someone recently, a lot of times people have asked this question, and one dish, Sadaf, that you will be, what is that dish? And in fact, on this podcast, I've said this multiple times that I would be kebab.
What kind of kebab? There's so many. Which one?
We have, it's just kebab. Kebab, the reason I like kebab because it's simple and yet complex. There's like the layers of flavors. Day before, I made something called majlisi kebab, which is also called ghutwa kebab, which is an Avdi kebab. and put it up on Twitter, then realized that a bunch of people in Karachi also have made it. Their mothers used to make it. So I get just like how Chef Vijay was saying, people coming and saying, bless you for the food. A lot of people just DM me saying, this particular thing reminded me of my mother or them of the family. So it was a pitch, by the way, just saying that I am a kebab person.
So if you are the kebab, then Archit is the haddi, or what's happening here?
हमेशा ही हड्डी होता है, क्या ही बताऊं. No, he's the Rumali with the kebab. We complement each other.
Awesome.
देखा, बेइज्जत नहीं होने दिया चित्त में, इसका बोल दोस्ती, समझे? Even though you didn't do research properly for me, but कोई बात नहीं.
एक छोटा सा ब्रेक ले लेते हैं.
बहुत कबाब की
हम भी थोड़ी रिसर्च कर ले हम बीच में, and then
कबाब की याद आ गई. चलो ब्रेक लेते हैं.
So we're back with Roni and Vijay. Roni, you mentioned your about Indian food in the US. Vijay, what are your pet peeves about Indian food in the US? Something that really annoys you?
I'm sorry, one more time. So you cut out a little bit.
Something that really annoys you about Indian food in the US, how it's served, what people think about it.
Yeah, like I said earlier, for them, like when you say like, hey, it's the first question they ask you is like, hey, yeah. I mean, obviously they know, oh, you're from India, right? Hey, the chicken tikka masala, it's butter naan. That's what it's like, dude. It's like the first thing they always say is like butter chicken, but like, as soon as they see Indian, the food is good, butter chicken, the naan, like it is not. It's not only butter chicken in India. Like there's a lot. So that's really annoys me. Like whenever people say that, like, oh my God, like let's let them know more about India too. Like it's not only about butter chicken or naan, whatever.
I actually want to share an experience this reminds me, I mean, from what both of you said, it reminds me of an instance. I was hosting dinner of around 30 people in Madrid, an Indian dinner. It was an Indian dinner night, and we were getting a restaurant to cater. And there were people from, I think, around 15 different countries coming, mostly the global West. Now, my friend and I, who we were co-hosting, and he told the catering company, ki thoda spice level kam rakhna because bahar se log aa rahe hain. I was like, why? We are in a multicultural society. We try their risotto just the way it is. We try their raw foods just the way they are, even though we don't have a lot of raw foods back home, raw meats back home. So why not let them have the whole experience and let them decide if they don't want to have extra spiced, and I'm using the word spice very broadly, if they want to have extra spice food or not. So let's be proud of our identity that we have the richness of cocktail of spices that we use. So let's just use them. And we eventually did end up using it in the menu and in the food that we served the guests, and they actually liked it.
Why wouldn't they? I think it's an assumption. People are literally breaking down the doors of Semma to get in, and everyone knows how spicy it is. It's the same story at Dhamaka, and we've never ever compromised, never toned anything down. And I mean, the desserts are not spicy, but
but it has spices like elaichi and other things, I'm assuming.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Lovely.
Sadaf, underrated guy?
Yes. I'm just so mesmerized by two things. पूछो क्या Archit?
पूछना पड़ेगा.
हाँ. नहीं जल्दी नहीं है, बता ही दूंगा. Mesmerized because it's such a passionate conversation about the food, both Roni and Vijay. And second, नौकरी मिल गई. खैर कोई बात नहीं, वापस.
You're hired. Doing our
hired. Kebabs on the menu.
In the last episode, you thought you would lose a lot of jobs considering the robot was going to replace you.
Exactly. The robots are replacing. Nobody can replace kebabs. हाथों का कमाल बाबू भैया. खैर. So, you all talked about what annoys you and all that. What I am interested in now knowing is about, of course, your most underrated food. And it could also be, let's actually do this. Vijay, your most underrated ingredient, and Roni, most underrated dish. Let's go with Vijay first.
Good question. Underrated. Okay, let's Roni go first.
I think what's underrated from a New York perspective. People talk about it, but I love an amazing jhol momo. Oof. Oh, it's insane.
Oh,
not many people would know what is jhol momo. So would you like to describe what is a jhol momo?
It's a momo in a broth. So it's it's in a jhol. But the magic of this is, it's something that I've had kind of, I think Nepali cuisine in general and you'll realize this, Archit, as you're talking about economics. The economics of a region define how broad the cuisine travels, how far it goes, right? So that's why it's no surprise that Bihar and Odisha have not made their mark in terms of really making a noise. And it's sad to us. So we wanted to flip that script, but that's a separate topic. Here it's about, as we talk about what I would like, what are some of those cravings? Man, I think jhol momo, food from Nepal. I think food from Sri Lanka is one of the best in the world, man. Like, it's unbelievable. And yet, where is that representation? Where's Bangladesh? If we talk about Bengali food, yes, because of the past, the country is separated and all of those things happen. But where is Pakistan in terms of, I would love to see more of these chefs come about. What I want to see isn't just about, I think it makes for a far richer conversation. I want to see more Indian chefs really sharing their own voices proudly. And at the same time, these neighboring regions, I think it paints a much better picture for who we are. But Champaran meat from Bihar is probably one of my guilty pleasures. And then we're talking about jhol momos. These are underrated, but something I would take it to my grave.
Sadaf from Bihar. If you want to start a Bihari restaurant.
I was about to say, guess
okay,
who's from
job
Bihar?
number 2. Let's go.
Me. Job number 2. नौकरी पे नौकरी, पैसे पैसे होंगे और कबाब भी होगा. विजय, आप सत्तू बोल सकते हो, रोनी और मैं बिल्कुल बुरा नहीं
Or
मानेंगे.
you can say cabbage. It's okay. But not red cabbage.
Hey, actually, yes. Yeah. So why not see cabbage too? Cabbage. There's also more ingredients called stone flour, like patta kapul. A lot of people don't even know that. Like, it's amazing how much flavor it brings to the food when you add this. Just tiny ingredients. A lot of people they're not even familiar with these ingredients, right? It's called, I'm sure that you guys also use in like other cuisines or some like Bihar or wherever it is. It's called patta kapul. We call it kalpas in Tamil. Just tiny ingredients, but it brings you amazing flavor to the food. That's one of the underrated ingredients. A lot of people not familiar with that.
I completely agree. It's just, I mean, I add, when I make my version of garam masala, I add that stone flour, or how it's called in Maharashtra as dhagad ke phool. It just lifts up the entire flavor and aroma. So when people ask me, what's your secret of garam masala? It's stone flour. किसी ने नहीं सुना.
Before we go to overrated, I'm actually curious about something. People often say to cook foreign cuisine in a foreign country, say Indian food in Spain. I'm in Spain. There's a disadvantage because you often don't get ingredients, but sometimes you also get better ingredients. Is that true for Indian food in the US? Are there some ingredients that are better quality than what you get in India?
The quality of meats and stuff, Vijay, I think is in many, many ways, if you're really doing, my God, like ducks, if you're talking about oxtail, you start naming, I think even fish in many ways. I think those are some of the pieces that we saw as broken is India has such tremendous diversity, but there isn't a system like it exists in Japan, for example. Why? How did sushi become what it is? How is someone charging $1,000 for not cooking? So for me, somebody's going to shoot me for this. It's so not true. I'm sorry to all the sushi masters out there. That's not what I meant. But it starts with that ingredient. And imagine the quality of fish. It's unfathomable. Yet in India, we have it all. But the systems in many ways are very uneven that doesn't allow for it. So I think proteins like meat and fish are just prime examples, in my opinion. Vijay?
Yeah, I think you correctly said. I think I agree with you. I think actually here, like where US, I think they focus a lot. They give a good care for all the meat, right? If they I think India has to do more on like good quality ingredients and stuff like that.
It's there, but not enough. That's what I mean. It's there in pockets. It's the challenge is we haven't figured out how to scale something and yet maintain quality. So whenever we get something, a good ingredient, it's there in a smaller pocket and it's better than anywhere in the world. I mean, think of our turmeric and what we're getting. Outstanding. But we're starting to get to a point where it can reach out to the rest of the world, how certain programs can be put in place. It's not that it's not there, but I think India just has that much to offer that is still so much is unexplored.
Right. Cool. Moving to overrated. This one's usually the harder one. One overrated ingredient for you again, Vijay, and one overrated food for you, Roni.
Now controversy part.
Correct.
You know us, yeah.
Oh gosh.
Go ahead, Vijay. You go first.
Let's say like truffle, maybe. Truffle,
Right.
like I don't know. It's like I don't know. In my opinion, it's a kind of overrated actually. Like sorry again, truffle lovers. Sorry.
I mean, I would agree.
Yeah,
I was working at one of the restaurants last year, and the chef was like, "Oh, there's something missing." Like, "Oh, wait a second, I know what is missing." So he goes back, he brings that bottle of truffle oil and couple of drops, and then tosses the dish. Like, voila, dish tastes perfect. So yeah, I think.
And most truffle oil available, I think, in mainstream restaurants in Delhi or I think in across India is fake truffle oil.
I was just going to say that. So it's not even actual truffles. Truffle oil and truffle paste is... Anyways, that's a whole different conversation.
You should call us for a different podcast because all those things going to be a lot.
Correct.
That should be called overrated. And we only talk about what's overrated out there.
Your turn, Roni.
Sure. I think in many ways, I think the idea of French cuisine controlling the world is incredibly overrated. I feel, look at every kitchen term. By the way, kudos to them for how successfully they've been able to do that and how incredibly we have all adapted to it. Every single one of us. What's mise en place? What is you start naming every term, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, amuse-bouche, every single thing of how we start describing the very foundation of food has become the very template of what French cuisine is. And that's why, without even realizing, we're all trying to fit into that template. One of the things we did at Semma, even at Masala Wala right now, we stopped putting headings on our menu. So, for example, starters or appetizers, entree, again a French term. So you start looking at these components. Even the very word restaurant comes from French cuisine. But as you start looking at that, we realized we don't really eat our meals that way. We are eating our meals in a very different way. So I am almost telling you on how you should eat, but through someone else's terms.
Absolutely.
So something so simple yet obvious. Open the Semma menu on the website and you're going to realize there are no headings. Just a list of items that are just there. You can eat it however you want. If my mom is cooking, food's on the table, we're all there and we're just consuming the food. Vada is there, you have it for tea time, but it's not like appetizer, second course. Whose mother is out there creating courses? I want to meet that mother at home. So if we're really going to talk about, cuisine, our home cooking, it's just we eat, man. And I think there's a beauty to that. That is still unexplored. That goes into the very idea.
You picked up on a pet peeve of mine. Every restaurant you go to in India, every restaurant, they're putting chicken tikka and anything without a gravy, basically, in appetizers. It's ridiculous. And everything with a gravy or a sauce and main course. And
we don't even know.
Yeah. And it's become so common across the country that people now order that way, that they first order, they're probably having drinks and they order main course, they order like, you're going to chicken tikka and it's going to make you more hungry.
Right.
So it's ridiculous. And another trend that's coming in to India, and actually it's been there for quite a while, is serving Indian food as tapas. So that's often an excuse, I think, for making the quantity smaller and prices higher because you're calling them tapas.
Hey, dude, it also is a fun word to use. Tapas kya hai? It's same word, chaat hi kha rahe ho, but you're actually saying ye to tapas hai. So what does the word tapas mean? Where did it come from? You're in that country.
Yeah.
What does tapas really mean?
It doesn't mean a small snack.
It means to cover.
To cover.
So you were covering. You put something salty on top of a drink.
Yeah.
And you have that as a bite. So in bars, it became a popular approach of how people were drinking. And these were little snacks and you're ordering more drinks. It became a whole cultural phenomenon.
Oh.
We adapted that, and it sounds like tapas style Indian, because it sounds cool. I think a lot of younger chefs also. I think that's something that when I see what Chintan is doing, Vijay is doing, how they're thinking, these guys are not fearful. They're not cooking for Instagram. They're not cooking for the next cool word, that has come about. And I think we need to adapt. Nothing. We have shed all of that. So what you just said, you're right. I think it's not just tapas. Tomorrow there will be another word. And I think each and every single, time, what we are just trying to say is we're not good enough for who we are. Let me be someone else.
Wow. What a little bit, I think what has changed over the period of time, and that could be just in conversational, maybe not necessarily at restaurant. People like us, when I'm saying us, I mean people who are researching on food, writing on food, etc. They are the older terms and which we are trying to bring back, right? Older terms, which Roni, you mentioned about, right? So I think we are still trying to find what is the Indian word for misopla, right? But words like bawarchi, khansama, rakabdar, abdar, masalchi, or the masala wala, right? Pandan, masala dan, etc., right? So all these things are, I think, coming back somewhere in the conversation. So somewhere I am hopeful about it, because I said if you're bringing these words back in conversation, there is a high likelihood that people are going to pick it up in their conversation. And then eventually, perhaps one day or the other, we will be able to see those terms in the kitchens. Who knows? I genuinely want people to call the chefs in the kitchen as khansama or ustads or like you create that kind of hierarchy, because I think Awadh or the back in days, we had that kind of hierarchy anyway. So the Rakabdar were something else. Khansamas were the chefs basically, or the gourmet chefs, right? And so on and so forth. So I think it's interesting how we have started using. Maybe, I think, Roni, you can use it. Chef Vijay will be called Khansama Vijay.
Job number three. Change the entire structure. This is just gonna just keep flying today. It's just 1, 2, 3. Let's go. This is for the next 5 years. You're set.
I'm set. देखो ये best podcast episode ever. Podcast का podcast. नौकरी की नौकरी, आम के आम, गुठलियों के दाम. आम के आम, गुठलियों के दाम. Now we come
That's a good one.
Now we come to your favorites. So, Roni, favorite dish, absolute favorite dish.
And Vijay, this time you can tell us your favorite dish as well.
Vijay, this time you go first. Favorite dish?
Like from the restaurant, you mean?
Anywhere.
Anywhere.
Anywhere works.
Well, I just like good biryani. Just anything with rice.
Music to my ears.
Music to Sadaf's ears.
Yeah. And I mean, anything that you cook with rice, even if you cook a good risotto, also I like risotto. So anything with rice.
Do you like a biryani from a particular region, or do you prefer biryani from a particular region? Doesn't matter.
I mean, yes. I mean, I do like the biryani from our region, which is we have in the restaurants called Dindigul biryani. I love that. But besides, yes. But besides anything, any biryani, I love it. And then, I mean, you do anything with rice, which is my favorite.
Absolutely amazing. Roni?
Rani is going to say caviar. Hold on, I'm waiting for the moment.
It's obviously truffles. It's obviously the truffle oil.
Of course.
I mean, come on.
Truffle oil on biryani.
I do like caviar. Yes. Truffle biryani. A concept. That's what we need.
Concept number 4.
So funny enough, I think I am a huge connoisseur of biryani myself. Like it's funny that it's something Vijay and I believe in. I think every desi, every Indian is somewhere in our hearts. I think if there's one dish that is your last meal, that's probably going to be like somewhere biryani. But there's another dish that I will mention that I've realized I really, really enjoy. And it's something only it gets made at home. And it's a poppy seed vada. So it's the simplest dish you've ever had. It's in a Bengali household, never makes it to a restaurant. It's just something that you posto is what we call it. Grind the posto, some green chili, little salt, couple of spices. It's really, there's nothing to it. But the magic is how you fry it. The outside has to be just crispy and crunchy. The inside has to be soft. And when you bite into it, I just have that with white rice, green chili, and I can have a whole meal.
Awesome.
Wow.
Disappointed. I was expecting so disappointed. I was expecting caviar from you. Like,
the reality is it's caviar and truffles. That's really that's the reality. This is just for the podcast. It's okay.
Yeah, this is for the branding purposes.
Right. Yeah. Secretly, you're going to find out.
People often pretend to love caviar and then actually have things like vada at home. You're the opposite. Super. This is absolutely amazing.
I think the way the Bengalis have made use of posto. I think Bengalis, Biharis, and Odiyas as well. I think nobody else have been able to use it the way three of us use it. Us being, of course, I'm Bihari now. So yeah.
Well, Sadaf, we didn't have a choice. The truth is, most of our cuisines, this is the leftovers from the opium trade.
Correct.
So absolutely. A lot of our food and how it has evolved, I think it's something, if you look at how fried chicken became prevalent in the African-American community to how poppy seeds and mustard seeds are being used in Bengali cuisine.
Yeah.
Why mustard oil? I don't think, we couldn't afford cashews. That was coming from Afghanistan, the Middle East in many ways. So Lucknowi biryani, all the way, follow the trail of biryani and you're going to start to see how from Lucknow to Bombay to Hyderabad and all the way, by the time, Wajid Ali Shah gets exiled in Bengal, what ends up happening? Now the guys run out of money and we're adding, potatoes to our biryani because it adds some extra starch and fills you up. So these are wonderful things because somewhere I think it summarizes Indian food in many ways, that we have been incredibly, almost to a level of genius on the level of jugaad. We made the absolute best out of the circumstances. So we had tremendous turbulence in the last 50, 100 years. But I think, look at how we're coming out of it. We made the very best of it. We found ways to just find excellence and find Semma in every single one of the things.
Wow. We are finding.
We saw how famines have actually influenced a lot of India's cuisine, and especially how much carbohydrate we consume comes from the idea that we don't know if we'll get food the next day. So why not stuff yourself up with the cheapest thing available? But absolutely, yeah, it's a great point you make. And honestly, Roni, Vijay, this has been a huge pleasure. I'm feeling proud of how you are representing Indian food in New York. And if I'm in the city, I will definitely come to try your food at Semma.
Please, to anytime.
You're never going to get a reservation anyway, so it's okay. Definitely, man. Please come and visit us. It's honestly, it would be so exciting to actually meet you guys. I was hoping, I was thinking this was going to be like we're going to have this banter and jokes. It turned out to be a serious conversation. What happened?
I know.
I mean, yeah, you gave us too much good content.
Too much good food you gave us. But Archit, please do visit us in US next year. Subtly saying things.
Please do. Please. Bunch of new restaurants coming up. Please.
समझ दो आस बोला आस जो अर्चित
तो नो समझ गया
वो क्या बोलते हैं वो समझदार को इशारा काफी है खैर
Awesome.
On that note, आज दुकान बंद करते हैं.
If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network.
You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com.
You can also follow us on our social media. We are @IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram.
And if you want to reach out to me on Twitter, I am Hussain Sadaf1, and on Instagram, I am Sadaf_Hussain. You can reach out to Archit
on Twitter @BandTofu and on Instagram @The Hustling Glutton.